The Truck Series, the Xfinity Series, and the Cup Series all head to Phoenix for championship weekend. We get you ready from a betting perspective next on the NASCAR Betting Preview Show live from Phoenix Raceway. Excited to go over everything we are here tonight. And, with Martinsville now in the rear view, it is championship weekend. Cannot believe that the season is already coming to an end in 2023, but we're going to do one last show here, close out the season live from Phoenix Raceway. Can't thank everybody at the team here enough for allowing us to have the show here for the second consecutive year. Lucas DeYoung and the entire staff, just can't thank them enough. So thank you. The NASCAR Betting Preview Show is presented by Atlas Hair. Atlas is an elite line of hairstyling products with cologne fragrances. So get started today at atlashair.com and use the promo code NASCAR for 20% off your entire order. atlashair.com, ATLASHAIR.com. And for everybody listening on YouTube, please make sure you smash that like button, hit the subscribe. It helps our partners over at In Between Media out a great deal. And we can't thank you guys enough for all the support year in and year out on X Spaces, on Twitter, or I guess that is Twitter now, YouTube, and the downloading the podcast, the NASCAR Betting Preview Show, and listening to it there. Just been all around a great year. So really excited to dive into some of the conversations tonight. We're going to have some guests on here in a little while on YouTube. So you make sure, throughout the show, you're chiming in on the comments on YouTube and Twitter Spaces and all over. We're going to get to so many different things. But I want to welcome on Phil, the Full Tank with Phil podcast, and Mark Harris, a.k.a. SKYBOX NASCAR. So, Phil, I'll start with you. You and I were doing a show last night. Your show dropped early this morning, the Full Tank with Phil podcast. So make sure you guys go out and listen to that. Great episode. Appreciate you having me on there. But how we feeling that, the next day, the day after, we did a draft, and I don't want to spoil it, but it was good content. So how are we feeling today?
I'm feeling good, Derek. And yeah, I appreciate you jumping on with me last night for sure. And this is something that I'm feeling a lot better with today than I did last night. It was, I don't know, sketchy to say the least, I would say. And I'm getting a little bit of background noise, so it's kind of throwing me off. But we did a draft of the 12 championship drivers in all three series, and Derek and I, drafted 6 each to our team. And the draft we ended up from 2 drivers from each series, which is a nice clean cut. And last night I felt a little like I got swindled a bit, but this morning I woke up and I'm thinking I'm going to take you. So we're going to tweet that out, and we're going to get some people's opinions as the week goes on.
Well, I like the confidence that you're building for yourself, so I can't hate on that. But yeah, no, it was a good time. Make sure you guys go and listen to that. Great content. Phil put out some good stuff. Other than the interview part, he put out a lot of good stuff. And Mark, I want to kick it over to you. You were in attendance for Martinsville, you and Rory Picks, who, Rory, we hope you're listening here, and we missed you on the show, but can't thank you enough, Rory, for everything you did this year and coming on. And hopefully we're able to connect in some way here again soon. But Mark, your dad and you went to the race. You had a good time, I would assume. Is that fair to say? How many hot dogs did you have?
Okay. So we set the line at 2.5 last week on this show. And we didn't have an opportunity before the race to get any dogs. And my main man, Rory Picks, volunteered to go down and get us an 8-pack of dogs. There's 4 of us. My dad was only eating 1. Whitney was only eating 1. So, and Rory maybe 8-2. Okay. So that left now 3 for me, and that would have set the over. However, Rory was gone for about the entirety of stage 2. And I'm like, I probably need to go check on them. There's no service, right? I finally figured out that the Wi-Fi was available. So the Wi-Fi was good, helped us out, play some live bets, et cetera, et cetera. And I walked down there to check on all Roars, and he's still in line. And I'm like, wow, these guys are hot commodities. I am fired up for these dogs. So about 15 minutes later, he gets back to the seats. They're out of dogs. How does Martinsville run out of dogs? They're out of freaking dogs. So the answer is no.
Sold out in the grandstand and sold out in the hot dog truck.
This is a fact. And if you guys want to know what NASCAR heaven is like, just go to Martinsville. That place is unbelievable. I mean, the scenery, the drive-in. I think Matt Weaver tweeted a picture of the drive-in. It's incredible. It was a nice warm day. I got a little red on my neck. And yeah, I got to share that day with my dad, who has only been to a couple tracks, and we got him down in the infield. And so thanks everybody for that. And man, that place is awesome. I know that it can sometimes be a snooze fest on TV, but watching it in person is like nothing else. And it doesn't help that it does help that it doesn't hurt. Jesus, that the place was sold out. So had a great time. Looking forward to the champ race this weekend, baby. Come on. How about it?
I like it. I'm fired up for this weekend just to see everything kind of unfold. I mean, the Xfinity race, we'll get to it here in rapid fire in just a second. But the Xfinity race was electric. Were you in attendance for that one? Or just Cup?
No, Roars was in attendance for Xfinity. I wish. I was watching it on my phone at a bar in Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, which,
natural.
What a race.
I like it. Okay. So we're going to dive deep, but yeah, the Trucks Xfinity Cup, just battling out for championship. I know there's so many. I mean, I said we're live from Phoenix Raceway, and I mean that. Now, if you look at Phil, he looks like he's in one of the suites up above the, the checkered flag area. I'm in the media center, so we got it all covered here today, which is going to be a lot of fun. So, as we kind of teased, again, everything's happening at Phoenix this weekend. There's a lot of good things to cover, and I want to get started with this first. Just want to say thank you to everybody that has come in and joined us here on the final show of the year. You got Christopher Clark, you got our guy, our favorite trucker out there, taking care of everything, chiming in. You got Kyle Robert, you got SC, who's going to be in attendance this week. And Brian, I believe, Brian Twining, you're going to be in attendance as well. So can't wait to meet you guys in person a little bit. And yeah, it's our guy Mark in Mississippi just chiming in a couple times. You got Matt as well. So Matt, thanks for all the support and everybody on Twitter. So mixing in a little bit of both there. But let's do this. I want to start with rapid fire. We'll have some guests come on in about 30 minutes or so. But Phil, I want to start with you. When we look at last weekend's race, Ryan Blaney scores the win. You were talking about, hey, here's a good opportunity to get invested on a guy at a large ticket, 31 plus. I believe it was maybe in 35 to 1.
35. Yep.
What's your outlook on Ryan going into this weekend, knowing, he's kind of been getting hot here as of late?
Yeah, I mean, this is a prereq to, I think, a conversation I'm going to have in one of the segments, but I don't understand how anyone could sleep on him. You got Big Mo on your side, and I think that has paid dividends in the past. We've seen that pay off in the past in a few different years. And his statistics at Phoenix are very good. On this show, folks have said it, that, I think Worm's we had a conversation about who Hamlin would try to prevent to get to Phoenix, and Blaney was one of those guys. So I think we saw, like, if he could get there, he'd be a force or a factor, a major player. And so I'm all about it. I got the, and I'll say this, SC out there, go fast Troy, ever since the bread bet,
that's true.
That's when things changed. Literally go back and look at the tape from that bread bet show. Blaney's been back in the picture here. So I'm part of a syndicate here that has a good investment on Larson. I'm not downplaying Larson, but I'm rocking the Blaney shirt for that 35 to 1 ticket and my New Year's Day ticket as well.
You know where I'm going here, Phil. You know, if Blaney wins the championship, it's almost like you have to replicate the bread bet in an honor, solely an honor, not because of my, wanting to see you struggle eating all that bread, but just as an honor to Blaney and winning the championship. Just putting that out there for you. Just
If
think
he
about
were to
that.
if he were to go and win the championship, I'm sure I'd find my way back there and post a pic of eating some of that delicious
Good.
bread. Yeah, shout
Good.
out Texas Roadhouse. Just throw a sponsorship our way.
Blaney's probably the hottest driver right now coming into the championship. Mark, who do you think is the coldest driver of this championship for? Is it Bell? Is it Larson? Is it Byron? Who would you say, man, they need to just pick it up a little bit? I have an answer, but I didn't know who you thought.
I think it's tough to say. When you look at Larson, he won the first race of the round of 8, and then you're coasting, right? All you're worried about is Phoenix. So it does not matter. He had the best car at Homestead. So, and then last week was literally did not matter. Byron sucked last week, but he's been so hot in the entirety of the playoffs. So, if you want to go to a week basis, I'd say Byron. And then Bell, who hasn't shown the greatest of speeds of any of these guys, had a car at Homestead, frankly, that stunk for half the race and found his way at the front with, Larson wrecking out and finding the short run speed and getting out in front of Blaney. I guess I'd have to say Christopher Bell, if you want to talk about who's been the slowest over the last, 4, 5, 6 weeks. I guess I'd have to go with Bell because I think you have to look at some context here and say, well, Larson was in, Byron was running very, very well. He had one bad race. So, and then Blaney, hello, the last 3 weeks, Ryan Blaney, as you guys outlined, has been just lights out. So I'm going to go with Bell, although that doesn't mean that I don't like him this weekend one way, shape, or form. So, yeah.
I'm looking forward to hearing that. Seth, pop that question from Christopher back up if you don't mind. Christopher was saying Fraud Blaney is an immediate fade this weekend. Larson by a milli. So that sounds like somebody that has a Larson ticket, obviously. And Blaney's getting a lot of love. So it's interesting to hear. But go ahead. I want to hear what you have to say there.
I was just going to say you could just put Fraud Larson in there and it would be an accurate statement. I mean, the dude has just he's the opposite of a closer, and his pit crew won him the 21 championship. And we've seen him, as Big Perm has said time and time again, he's the bed shitter. So I think while Fraud Blaney is fine to have that opinion, you could also insert Larson in that statement.
Yeah, I feel like that comment has venom for some reason. There's something to it. He hurt Christopher in some way, shape, or form. But to do an immediate fade, obviously Larson's the favorite for a reason, but I don't think Blaney's an immediate fade at all.
Yeah.
So that has some venom.
That is the little venom. You're right. And it's another thing here. Matt Jones, he says Blaney is taking this shit, and it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens. So a lot of love for Larson, some for Blaney. Obviously, everybody's going to trend towards what tickets they might be holding from a January 1st bet, like you do, Phil, or maybe you picked up some good pricing just a few weeks back. So, Phil, for you, and again, we'll do these rapid fire. That was kind of my fault. I've been put a long question there. Let's look at Xfinity real quick. I know Mike Bachman, who does our Xfinity stuff. Who's a driver that you're looking for coming out of there the most? Who do you think gets it done?
You're asking the wrong guy, but I'll take my uneducated take here and just go with John Hunter Nemechek. He's the long favorite. If you look at all 3 series, he's the largest gap between the favorite and the second best. So you have to trust the books there. His stats at Phoenix, I had him up last night when we were talking, Derek. I'm pulling him up right now, and he's at Phoenix the best of the bunch. 2 top 5, 6 for 6, finishing in the top 10. 6.5 average finish. It's the best of the bunch that are in the final. So I'll go with John Hunter. I mean, he's raced at that racetrack in all 3 series recently, so he's kind of had a bunch thrown at him. And John Hunter is who I would take of that group.
How about you, Mark? Do you have an opinion there?
Yeah, not this season, but over the dude's entire career, Justin Allgaier, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, he's never won an Xfinity championship. So I think all eyes are on him. If it doesn't happen this year, when's it going to happen? He's in the championship for every other year. It feels like he's been to 8 of these so far. And listen, he squeaked in last week, but that doesn't mean shit when you come to this week. It's all level playing field. So I think Justin Allgaier, I think he's finally got to get himself a championship. But just like you guys said, John Hunter has been the man to beat all season long, and I don't expect that to change this weekend.
There's something that Kyle Robert put in. He said, can we build a championship parlay for the weekend? And I know what you're asking, Kyle. You're looking for somebody to do a championship pick of who's going to win trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. I've seen some places where you cannot parlay those. So you might be able to parlay the win bets. You can't parlay the championship. So anybody out there, make sure that you're paying attention to how you're constructing those. But I do think maybe at some point here, do you guys, Phil, ask you first, do you put any parlays like that together? It is the championship. Last weekend you put, okay, you're shaking your head. Yes.
100%. Yeah. I get too anxious waiting on Friday afternoon for the trucks. And then obviously within reason, I'll, for the disposable amount that you can play around with, I definitely do that. Cause that would be awesome to hit that first night. And I like Worms, Heim, Larson, and Allgaier. To me, Xfinity is interchangeable, but I like Heim and Larson as part of that for sure.
Okay, so you like Heim and Larson there. Mark, just kind of speaking on the betting terms a little bit, your state of Florida had some news break. There's many that I've been able to find that listen on X, listen to the podcast, or listen on YouTube that are from the state of Florida. Some good news was had today with kind of some stuff that's happening for you guys with legislation.
Yeah, so it's been rumored for like the last 3 months. It was supposed to happen before football season, yada, yada. But the Seminole tribe, they have some casinos down here in Florida, and they've been lobbying for years to get sports betting on the docket. They went live back in December of 21 for about 3 weeks as I guess, a trial run. And then they've been close. Well, now the government, the courts, the legislation, the whoever has finally signed off and told this lobbyist group, I think they're called West Flagler, to go kick rocks and go hide under a rock, which that's what they should do, because the Seminole tribe is bringing sports betting via Hard Rock Sportsbook to the state of Florida. Should be live in the next few weeks. I know that we've all, if you're from Florida and you gamble on sports, you've heard this story before. Oh, it'll be live in a few weeks. It'll be live in a few weeks. Well, this time it actually is going to be live in a few weeks. So I can't be more fired up. Hard Rock Sportsbook. I don't care if it's only one book. We have got it, baby.
All right. I like it. So that'll be good. That'll be fun content to see how that's done next year with some of the available new options for you. And if they're listening, maybe they jump on board everything that you're doing and join a partnership with that. So that'll be really cool there. Congrats to everybody down in the state of Florida. Last question for you, Phil, and then I'll finish one here with Mark. We talk about the championship four. We talk about those guys at length. Who's been a guy that has disappointed in the year of 2023 in the Cup Series side?
I will go with the Colleague team.
Okay.
I think that they had a great year last year, and obviously culminated with a championship four appearance with the Hail Melon and Chastain. So heading into this season, I think they were set up for success. The Daytona episode, you had Spider on from Barstool, and he had just talking with Suarez, and Suarez told him he was going to win 6 races this year. Like that's how confident it was. And we all kind of like laughed at that a little bit, but like, hey, great to see that confidence, right? What happened? It was really huge disappointment from those two guys. And obviously, Chastain hung in there a little bit more than Suarez did, but still from what they kind of built to this year, very disappointing. And I kind of equate that to almost RFK. Are they going to be able to do that, sustain that next year, the success that they had in 2023, or are they going to fall off like Trackhouse? So Trackhouse, both of them are my answer, and we'll see what happens next year with those two teams.
I agree with something Worm is saying. The 99 is driving like he has a hot seat, and with Zane Smith now kind of affiliated with that team going into 24 and then maybe into 25. Yeah, definitely a hot seat. Or SVG. Say SVG comes over to America and starts kind of tearing it up a little bit. Wouldn't that be something on ovals and everything? So just throwing that out there. All right, Mark, last question here, rapid fire. One of my favorite questions that I ask you because I think you provide some of the best stuff. Monday morning headline reads what?
Christopher Bell steals the championship.
Okay. So that would be, I think that would be a steal. I really do. I mean, depending on how practice and qualifying we look at, not everybody's talking about him. So, Mark, I'm going to start with you, actually. I'm going to let you lead off for the last show of the year. When we talk about the head-to-head markets, where are we going?
Let's go, baby. It's only fitting. Best for last.
Give you your shine.
I'm going Kevin Harvick minus 125 over Tyler Reddick. And when we look at comp tracks this week, I'm obviously looking at Phoenix 1. I'm looking at New Hampshire. I'm looking at a little bit less of both Richmond's, and I'm looking at a little bit of Gateway. So if you're good at Phoenix, you're good at New Hampshire. And the reason New Hampshire is because of the tire compound. We're bringing the same tire compound, tire code to Phoenix 2 that we did at New Hampshire. So if you're good at those two, and then if you want to pile on with the Richmond races, I'm good with that. So I'm going Kevin Harvick minus 125 over Tyler Reddick. And this year, these guys on these comp tracks have been fairly close. But Harvick has the slight nod. Okay, he's better than Reddick in just about every stat, but it's only by like a couple spots, 5 spots max. But I had to find a way. If you're watching on YouTube, I had to find a way to mix my guy in. All right, and let's look at some stats here. So Harvick 3rd in NLD power rankings, Reddick 8th. Over the comp tracks, speed ranking, Harvick 3rd, Reddick 7th. Average finish on comp tracks this year, Harvick 2nd, Reddick 10th. Average running position, Harvick 2nd, Reddick 9th. And Harvick is also 4 for 5 in beating Reddick on comp tracks this year in finishes. So we all know about Kevin Harvick's top 10 streak here, which is honestly one of the craziest stats in NASCAR history. But what's even more crazy to me is that he won 4 straight here back to the mid-teens. Last time he didn't finish outside of the top 10, I was a sophomore in high school. So I didn't even know what gambling was, which is it's just bonkers. So if you also think that there's a little bit of NASCAR wants Happy Harvick to go out on a high note, we saw with Jimmy Jam, he finished 5th, and there were guys laying over after guys laying over to let Jimmy Jam. They were not racing him. So if you're feeling a little bit of this and a little bit of that this week, I think there's something to say about Harvick maybe for a top 5er. I'm just saying. I saw a minus 130 top 10 ticket on Harvick out there earlier in the week. Ooh. Go ahead and slap that. That's not available anymore. So yeah, I like my man Kevin Harvick. He is just ridiculous here at Phoenix. And while Reddick has been good at Phoenix in the past, or in the Phoenix in the spring, he's just been that next tier down from Harvick. And I also saw this line on DraftKings was minus 155. So when I got it at minus 125, I am in.
Okay, so you like Harvick over Reddick, and not to spoil anything, but Phil, you were kind of sharing the same things last night when we were talking a little bit. Now, is that the side that you're going, or are you going to go with somebody else?
So I'll call out a different head-to-head, but I got to say, like that matchup, I talked about it at length on the podcast last night.
That was your last one.
It's the last bet of the year, dude, and for all of those reasons, like all of those, and then the only thing I'll add is. Did you hear Tyler Reddick at all this week? Like he is just down, like big time sad, big sad. He was on an interview with Daniel Trotta and Larry Mack, and I'm telling you, he was like so disinterested. It sounded like he was like sick with the flu on like his 3rd week. Like he was just dead. And so there's a situational element to it. So great pick. I love it. I'm on that already. And I can't wait to see it. play out. I'm going to go with a similar situation, kind of like more of a human element to it again. And, might catch a little flack for this, but it's the last race of the season. Can't hold anything back, right? Chase Briscoe plus 100. Head-to-head matchup plus 100. If you get that number on somebody you feel good about, I like it. He's going up against a bigger name, but it's against Martin Truex Jr. Okay. And you want to talk about down, getting knocked out. I'll talk about him first, then I'll talk about why I like Chase.
Yeah.
Truex, I don't see him getting off the mat. They had a toxic situation there in that 19 camp going into Martinsville.
Mm-hmm.
Then he speeds on pit road. The Jackman screws up. I cannot see them looking at each other coming into Phoenix going like, come on, guys, like, let's do this. Let's do it for each other, right? Like they are looking to get the hell out of there. And so they're disinterested. Get him out the door. Let's look at Briscoe. Last 3 races at Phoenix. I mean, you could argue that it's one of his best tracks. 3-0 in the last 3 races versus Martin Truex Jr. He has got a 1st, a 4th, and a 7th. And Truex has finished outside the top 15 in all 3 of those races. You look at the comp tracks this season, just at a high level, Briscoe doesn't really stand out to you because he had a 34th place finish at, I think, Gateway. But other than that, in the other 4 races, he didn't finish anywhere past 12th. So he, as we saw last week, a little bit of momentum. And this is a team that would say, hey, let's rally around each other here. We know we're coming back. Stewart-Haas was trash this year, but these are the tracks we're good at. Let's go out on a high note. We're not going to see that from the 19 camp. So for all of those reasons and the fact that it's plus money, I like that bet. So that's what I'm calling out this week.
I do like what Big Ross said. Truex is mentally in Cabo already. So
exactly.
I do like that. So you have a couple matchups there. And like you said, Mark, you pointed out the Harvick over Reddick, and Phil, you talked about that on your podcast, and don't want to spoil all the details, but you were pretty hyped about that, kind of like you were talking about here. And then, you said about Briscoe and plus money there. So, and he runs well here. So it'll be interesting to see what SHR does. Very interesting tidbit that Denny Hamlin said on his podcast about how well Ford has been running on these types of tracks, which is why, we saw a lot of Fords run well here in the spring. And one thing that Chris pointed out, I think was very good as well. Reddick kind of, his finish did not indicate what it maybe should have been. There was a late restart. He had 4 fresh tires. He had an opportunity to really take the lead going into the white flag lap. Ultimately finished top 3. And, but, finishing there was a little interesting how everything shook out. So how about this, Phil? I'm going to go to you, and we'll kind of move through these a little quicker. Finishing position. What have you found for us from a finishing position prop? I know this week gets a little funky with the championship 4 and then how everything gets priced, but what'd you find for us?
I'll try to keep it as quick as I can here. The number that I took it at was -105. In PA, I see via the website that the best number is -125. I still like it. It's Joey Logano. You talked about the Fords a second ago. Joey Logano for a top 10 here at Phoenix. 2023, the comp tracks, he's first on the short flat track. Average finish 5.4 is his average finish this season. That's best of everyone. That's kind of surprising, considering kind of how his season shook out at the end. He's kind of forgettable now. At Phoenix, he's obviously pretty good. He's 7 for 10, finishing the top 10. He's got top 5 average finish in all of NASCAR, 5th in total speed this season on these short flat tracks. So he's got like kind of top 5 numbers. Obviously, with the championship race, things are a little bit more wonky, but I see Logano being there, needing to be strong to be able to do what Blaney did for him last year and be a factor to help. So if that's the case, he's going to be in the top 10, and to get him at -105 or, whatever you can see him at in your local book where you are, I think the number's just fine. So Logano, top 10.
Okay, so Joey Logano, top 10. We talked about Blaney a lot, and these two ran 1-2 last year. So how about you, Mark? Is there another Ford that you're looking at? Is it Joey Logano, or is it somebody else?
Buddy, it's a Ford and it's somebody else. And I just want to shout out Bet365. And I think a couple other books had some wonky top 10 bets this week, which I am all over. Now, I'm not going to bet 10 of them like some people are, which to each their own. If you can find a way to profit, money's money, just not my style. Okay. I'm going Brad Keselowski top 10 at what I made my notes. And when I placed my two bets, it was plus 240 on Bet365. Now, it has since come down to 2-1, which I would still take. I would take it plus 150. Caesars has him plus 115, which I would consider taking. But if you got him plus 240, give me a break. So, Phoenix won, New Hampshire, smidge of Gateway, couple Richmond races if you want them. He had the 8th best speed ranking at Phoenix 1, 9th best at New Hampshire. He had a mechanical problem at Gateway. We never knew. Ran very well at both Richmond races. 9th and 6th speed ranking there. So that's 4 top 10 speed rankings at all the comp tracks. If you throw Gateway in there, well, he had a mechanical issue. You can't knock him for it. In the spring here, 6th best average running position. He was running 7th before that late caution came out with the ridiculous ending. On a normal week, I am taking this plus 115, plus 120, where it's at Caesars. That's what I am taking this at. That's not a championship race. And the fact that the books are going to hang and then take them down and then put them back up and they're still ridiculous, Brad Keselowski. So I know we all talk about the Harvick top 10, yada, yada. He's done it 1,000 times in a row. Well, Brad Keselowski, the last 3 races here, has not recorded a single one. And if you go back before RFK, when he was with Penske, he had 3 straight top 10s. He was 4 out of 5. He won a couple stages here at Phoenix. He was pretty good. Now, I think this RFK team is closer to what he was driving in at Penske than what RFK has been the last 3 races at Phoenix. Now, Phoenix 1 was a long time ago. And you can make the argument that the car has changed, the drivers have changed, the yada, yada, the tire compound, whatever. So I think RFK at what they're bringing to the track now is closer to the 2 car that Brad was in than what RFK has the last 3 races at Phoenix. So we're getting him plus 240. He absolutely is going to be a top 10 car. And he's shown that on Comtrax this year. And he showed that historically at Phoenix. And once again, it's plus 240. It's plus 200. You can still go get 2-1. And if you don't have access to 2-1, go take plus 150. Go take plus 110. I don't care. I love Brad Keselowski for a top 10 this week.
Yeah, well, that was a driver that Worm and I were talking about maybe about an hour and a half ago. So, and he even put that he played that. So, good pricing there for you to get that at plus 240. I know it was out there at 2-1 as well. So, let's go to you, Mark, from an outright perspective. There's a driver. I haven't heard his name yet. Is this where he shows up?
This is where he shows up, and it is Christopher Bell. And I typed in 4.5, but actually you can go grab him at Bet Rivers at 5-1. So I have not bet this 5-1 on Christopher Bell. And if you don't have any championship futures at this point, you either had some really unfortunate tickets with Truex and Hamlin and Logano maybe and a couple other guys. But I can't help you at this point. It's tough, right? If you just want to bet the championship race winner, I think the only person you can go for right now is Christopher Bell. That being said, he's 5-1 to win the race, and he's like 350 or 4 to win the championship. I don't think there's any reason to even sniff the championship bets unless you have 3 of the 4 like I do. So I'm still trying to figure out what my hedge opportunity is if I'm even going to. I have a couple Larson 6.5-1 tickets. I got Bell at 11, and I have a free bet with Blaney at 10, which were all taken many months ago. So that leaves Byron. I got to figure out what to do with Byron. Do I take him 3-1 to win the race? Do I take him 250 to win the championship? I have yet to decide if I'm going to put some money down on Byron. But my argument for Christopher Bell here is the odds, first of all. He shows up when it matters. The last 2 years, he showed up at the Roval. He won the Roval, then he won Martinsville, and that was his first championship race. Now, you hear people say it all the time. It's very difficult to win the championship, to win the Super Bowl, to win the World Series the first time that you're there. It's very difficult. Well, this is his second time. His crew chief, Adam Stevens, has been in 7 of these. He's won 2 championships. So he's been there before. And what have we been talking about with Christopher Bell the last 4 years, 3 to 4 years? He's a short, flat track guy. So I love the 5-1 number on Bet Rivers for him to win the race. So if you're not holding a single ticket and you can't hedge, if you can't let it ride at this point in the week or this point in the year, I think the only person you go to turn to is Christopher Bell here.
Okay, so C Bell is the side that you like there. How about you, Phil? Where have you found an outright? Are you sticking with the guys that are in the championship 4? Or are you going somewhere else, or are you going a different series?
No, I didn't think to do that. Yeah, so
do anything.
Okay, I could do whatever I want. Well, I just like to say what Mark just broke down, perfect. And I'm in a very similar situation where Byron's the only guy I don't have money on, and I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to do that as well. And so thinking of it as if you have nothing on any of these guys, I think the best bang for your buck right there is Christopher Bell for all those reasons that he just laid out. So great stuff. To answer your question, Derek, I'm not taking anybody else to win the race. That would be, to me, silly. We've seen it proven in a large sample size. These guys get the benefit from these other drivers. No one wants to be the guy to take out one of these championship 4 drivers. So they're going to get the benefit from everybody. So it just is a fool's errand to throw money down, even though they are kind of enticing to see, like Harvick 22-1, Hamlin 18-1, or whatever you're seeing. I told you outright 325 for Blaney on Bet Rivers because I'm just kind of riding the hot hand. I got the shirt on, all that stuff that we talked about to start the show. Reasons why I like Blaney, but yeah, I'll dip into another series for a second, and Corey Heim. Corey Heim is in a perfect situation, I think, in the Truck Series on Friday night. He's not the favorite. Horsevard is the favorite, and he's coming back to the 11 next year. He knows where he is. He's been so good all year, had a good run in his only run at Phoenix last year, finishing 7th in that race. He's put all the pieces together this year. This is his race to lose, even though he's not the favorite. So if you don't have any investments on him or any of those guys, I think Heim's going to win the race. Enfinger, if you're looking for a little bit more of a number, he would be who I would steer you to. If you don't like the plus 160 for Heim, Enfinger is a little bit more for the gambler, but Heim is who I'm going with on Friday night.
Okay, so I like that. And, before we move into the next opportunity here to kind of talk with some of our guests here tonight, we're going to do this on YouTube. And I can't thank everybody enough that's listened on X Spaces. So many people have listened to X and YouTube at the same time. We're going to move all the conversation over to YouTube so it can be captured for the podcast feed as well. So thank you guys on X for listening. Join us over at the YouTube side. If you want to listen exclusively over there, download the podcast. And thank you guys once again over there. So I want to welcome on 2 guys now. I believe they're ready. And I see one of them doing their hair now, which is perfect because we need that. So Chris Wormy, Todd Furman, host of the Stay Green podcast and Bet the Board. Gentlemen, it wouldn't be a championship weekend event if we didn't have you two in the audience. Todd, we had you on last year where you got to join us a little bit. Sorry we don't have Rory on to kind of give some pushback with you here, but how are you guys doing?
I'm good. I can't speak for Chris, but there aren't enough hours in the day for him to style his hair and make sure he looks the part as if anyone gives a shit how he looks when he's jumping on. The only thing that matters is picking winners, and I know Chris has struggled with that throughout the course of the playoffs. So
I'm so glad I'm here. This has been great. Thank you.
I was going to say, do you have anything you want to add there to what your co-host just said?
No, I mean, he can hate on my hair all he wants, but I got great salad. Let's be honest.
Well, I wanted to have you guys on because you guys do so much for many in the community. You guys obviously have the podcast that you do with Stay Green, and Todd, I don't know how you juggle your schedule from doing everything with NCAA football, hockey. I think I saw you do a cheerleading competition at one point, handicapping that. So you do a little bit of everything. So how are things in your world, Todd? And last week of the year for the Cup Series, trucks and Xfinity. So how are we feeling going into Phoenix?
It's always bittersweet because you spend so much time toiling away at NASCAR, being the longest sport that I handicap. I mean, I don't know how the drivers, the crew chiefs, and everybody associated with these teams goes about their business. I mean, essentially starting with the Clash in early February, taking it to early November. I'm always happy to get one thing off my plate because before we blink, we're going to have 37 plate tracks to kick off the 2024 schedule. So we won't get to handicap a meaningful race probably until the middle of April. But you mentioned football. There's no doubt that takes up a lion's share of the time, but I'm interested to see how things unfold this weekend. I'm not going to speak for any of you guys. I'll speak for Chris because that doesn't bother me. It just still, for me, feels like we missed such a glorious opportunity in this sport when the final race of the season is at Phoenix instead of at Homestead, where you get the tire wear, you get the 1.5 mile track, when the package that we're seeing in the next gen car is so much better. So can only hope that we get a high level of competition. You have to imagine the 4 drivers that are vying for the championship will be in the thick of things. And let's see if we can all get a various future or 2 home, since I know all 5 of us, I'm sure, have a little bit of exposure to a couple of the drivers that are in the mix.
Yeah, we have a little shot to make some money this weekend, which is good. And Chris, I'm curious from you, you work so hard week in and week out, starting on Monday, up until race day, with what you do with the pre-race poll and then everything you do live. When you start looking at next year, do you give yourself a couple days off, a couple weeks off, or what's that kind of look for you? Because I know there's so many that try to emulate what some of the people that creating content are trying to do. So how do you kind of go about that from an off-season perspective?
I mean, I'll take some time off, that's for sure. I don't know. I mean, I think it's really important to be able to go back and kind of figure out, where did I miss an opportunity to make money in the previous year, whether that's, having access to additional accounts or maybe getting more involved in Xfinity and trucks. I feel like I left a little bit on the table there. So it's just kind of reflecting on the season, because the goal is to ultimately make money and to make sure that I don't have a job. And, but I definitely want to take time off. I mean, it's not like I work that hard. I mean, I appreciate you prefacing that.
Yeah, hold on a second
really
here. Derek, before you're going to pump up Worm's tires and all of this, let's not pretend that Worm is working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. What happens on Mondays, I'll walk you through Worm's handicapping week. I get 37 texts at about 1 o'clock Pacific, our lines up, and that continues in 5 to 10 minute intervals until you can see the openers. There's either value that we'll bet into, and if there's not, Worm disappears for 36 hours to go sip a nice glass of red. He'll read a book. He'll resurface on Wednesday. He'll tell everybody in the NASCAR community how busy he is. And then he'll actually work when cars unload, whether it's the trucks or the Xfinity Series. And for the next 2.5 months, we probably won't hear from him. He'll ask for a football bet here or there to keep his accounts alive and flush. But I may actually have a project that I want him to dig into. So this offseason hopefully won't be as light for him as the last couple of years have been.
Well, I don't even know what it pays, but I already know you can't afford it. So
I like it. So you're putting them to work.
That was pretty accurate, though. That was pretty accurate.
Phil or Mark, if you guys have anything, go ahead. If you have anything to ask it all, I know you guys typically do.
I just want to know what it's like to not have a job.
It's a great question, Mark. I'm wondering the same thing. So if Chris can tell the 4 of us what that's like, it'd be lovely to try and hear what that experience means and to be retired essentially at 40 years old.
You don't want to do it.
Yeah, no, I think I would. Yeah, no.
When people ask me what I do, if I don't want to answer the question, I just say, oh, I'm an analyst for a sport, or I'm an analyst. And hopefully that is enough. And then if that's not enough, I'm kind of retired. I turned a hobby into a career, and they're like, okay, but then they don't, for someone that's 38 years old, that's not a very satisfying answer for someone that's asking the question. But I don't know. I mean, but it's like you still have to do it. The beauty is, and I think both. I mean, I don't, Phil, I don't know what you do, but I know, Todd, you still kind of work for yourself. And I know, Mark, you still ultimately work for yourself. I think the goal in life is to, you don't want to do anything you don't want to do. You know, everyone would say I want to do what I want. Yeah, but sometimes you don't know what you want. What you want is to not have to do something you don't want to do. That's true freedom. So, you know, as much as, you know, you guys can give me shit.
What the hell is going on around here? Is this a NASCAR podcast? Are you disseminating life advice? I mean, Derek isn't inviting you to go speak to his girls at school on career day. That's the bottom line here. You can tell us whatever you want.
Will not be allowed.
This podcast,
I got more followers giving life advice. I got more followers getting life advice than NASCAR picks. Like, how the hell does that happen? Like, I post something about working out, which is just obvious. Everyone should be working out. And I get more followers from that and more interaction from that than I do like, hey, you know, for the last 3 months, I've been screaming from the top of the mountains, just, hey, bet Kyle Larson at 7-1 to win the championship. You'll find yourself in a way you can hedge. And I don't get any followers for that. But all of a sudden I say, you know, work out in the morning and people are like, oh, you're so wise. It's like, what?
All right. I have a question. I got a NASCAR question and you segued that. So like, I'm in a very fortunate position where I have everybody but Byron and I'm going to profit as long as anybody but Byron wins. But how do you, Worm, how do you bet it? Do you take to win the race? Do you take to win the championship? I know every situation is different. But I guess my main question is
That's
here.
a good question.
Go ahead.
I think at Phoenix, this is probably one track where you could get someone that's not in the championship for to actually win the race. I mean, we saw it last year with Blaney. If there weren't, you know, this unspoken team rule, Blaney wins that race. I think it's going to take long green flag runs, or it's going to take someone to unload really fast and then have this great qualifying that's mixing it up with the leaders the whole day. You know, I think last year at the championship race, the closest we saw with that was Chase Briscoe, but it all started with unloading quick in practice and then qualifying in that top 4. If you can do that, you can just find yourself in the mix. Now, if it's Kevin Harvick, he absolutely can win the race. He's going to need long green flag runs, but I think that there's only a handful of guys. I think you could maybe throw Brad Kay in there as someone that could win the race if he qualified well. But I don't think anyone, if they don't qualify well, I don't think anyone's going to drive through the field. I mean, we saw Harvick do that as good as anybody earlier this year, and he still wasn't able to punch the ticket. So I would say make sure you're hedging. Well, at least my opinion is hedge on the championship to win the championship. Do not find yourself getting middled. The last thing you want is a long green flag run. Let's just say it's a full fuel run, which would be 90 laps. Harvick could win that from maybe 5th place. The last thing you want is to be sitting there with your hedge and your guy's leading the race, and he's just going to let Harvick go, because if Harvick's got that kind of speed and it's not a teammate or there's no affiliation, he can just go out there and win the race and you still win the championship. So if you're going to hedge, fucking hedge. Like, don't put yourself in a situation where you could get middled, you know, losing the race bet and, you know, a championship bet as well.
You know, one thing, Chris, that you mentioned there, and I know we'll talk about it on our show as well, I think NASCAR just does everything in their power, guys, to make sure that whoever is in the championship for is going to have a chance to win the race. But Kevin Harvick provides a unique situation here where I'm sure on some level the sport would love it if the 4 went out on top and the Ultimate Series champion finished second. But we saw it last year. I mean, if that was normal racing conditions, Ryan Blaney blows by his teammate and it's not even close. But for all these guys that talk a big game about roughing one another up, they know if they get in the way of a championship 4 contender here, that's going to come back to bite them in the ass. So they race a little bit differently in those spots. They're not as likely to take some of those aggressive shots that might be there, that if this was the race we were seeing at Phoenix in early March compared to what's at stake this week. So I know so many of the prices when you look at the outright market are aggressive, and you see drivers that would never be 25 to 1, 50 to 1, 60 to 1. Those are prices that are out there for a reason. And I think what's a better illustration of how odds makers see this race unfolding is the top 10 market, because when do you see a driver at 60 to 1 at a price inside the top 10 at minus $1.25? I mean, normally that's a mathematical correlation right off the top that you go, wait a second, this doesn't add up. But this race is an entity unto itself, and I think you have to handicap it a little bit differently with that same mentality in mind as you build out your dance card.
Yeah, there's stuff there I was hoping that you guys would touch on, because I think you did it last year, Chris, where you're talking about, or I think you were answering questions over the weekend, like leading in championship races, helping people understand how to hedge, because it's not something that most people know how to do. But when you kind of explain it, it's a good tool. So anybody listening, reach out to any of these guys. They can kind of help guide you in a good direction there. So, I know I don't want to spoil any of your podcast or anything that you're going to do here in about 10 minutes, but what's the storyline that you guys are kind of watching? I know we try to eliminate the Final Four. Everybody's talking about those, but is there something specific? And Chris, I'll start with you, that you're kind of keeping an eye on, especially from the Cup Series side.
Yeah, absolutely. I think practice and qualifying are going to be monumental. I mean, we've talked about how hard it is to pass in this next gen era. It's going to be hard to come from like 11th place and win this race. If you slip up in qualifying, or you make a mistake, or you make a poor adjustment after practice to qualifying, that is so tough to come back from, because you're having the 11th place pit stall. A lot of the times this race at Phoenix has been determined by a late caution and your ability to get on and off pit road. I think that we saw it last week with Denny, where Denny went out and ran a mock qualifying run to start practice, just because they knew how important that would be to the outcome of the race. I think you'll see more of that at Phoenix, especially with this hour practice time. I fully anticipate teams to do mock qualifying runs, because that's setting up the weekend. It's like, okay, you want to be able to control this race. The minute that you qualify in the top one or two, or I would say in the top two rows, if you have the fastest car, you can kind of dictate what will happen the rest of the weekend. Whereas in the past, pre-next gen car, you could start 15th, and if you still had a great piece, you'd be able to work your way to the front. I just don't see that happening this year with this car where these teams are at.
How about you, Todd?
Chase,
Go ahead.
Chase, Larson, and Logano, the three winners at Phoenix for the championship, they all won from the pole. If there was a bet out there that said, hey, pole winner wins the race, I think that would be tantalizing. I would probably take.
Yeah, but at what price, right? Because
I'm just saying, I have to see what it is. But it's interesting that that's how it's been since we've been to Phoenix.
So I fully anticipate, there's been a lot of discussion this week, I think, on how Blaney has to be the favorite. And to be honest, I tend to agree. But that's because the explanation that we've been using is, okay, like Phil, I've given you props about this. Like, what happens when Penske actually puts all their resources into that 12 team? And I'll tell you what happens is they're fast as shit. That's what happens. I mean, they're arguably the fastest car at, they were decent at Vegas, and then great at Homestead, and obviously by far the best at Martinsville. But remember that this 5 team has been working on a car for 2 weeks or 3 weeks at this point. You think that HMS is going to show up with a dud for Kyle Larson? I fully anticipate him to have a very Larson style week where he looks like he's the best in practice. He qualifies well, probably top 3, even pulls it, and looks like the favorite throughout the weekend. However, that track's going to change a lot. And I think that when that track goes through changes, it's a little bit more hot and slick. I think Ryan Blaney and that 12 team will be as strong or stronger late in runs. But I think if you wait, you'll find a better price on Blaney, because I do think Larson will look so good in practice and qualifying.
I mean, I think, you mentioned a good point, Chris, talking about Larson. And I think if anybody wants to fall back on the last 2 races, it's not going to be a good illustration of exactly what we should anticipate the 5 unloading with at Phoenix. And with Kyle Larson, I mean, this format lends itself quite nicely to boom or bust. I mean, Kyle Larson's out there to win races when it matters most. He doesn't care about biding his time, waiting for the opportunity, but I think he'll come in with a very different mentality in this particular race. Now, what gets interesting with Larson, knowing that his teammates competing with him, William Byron won the race in the spring. He wasn't the best car. I think all of us would agree that Kyle Larson was probably the fastest car. William Byron gets the properly timed cautions, able to get a good restart and launches for the win. But when we make a case for Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano needed Ryan Blaney to get over the hump last year. Is this now where Joey Logano can return the favor for Ryan Blaney if he has a fast car and he's able to race up inside the top 3, kind of serve as a fullback and almost pave the way for the 12 car to be able to get through? The one thing that concerns me the most about the 24 is you heard a little bit of nerves in his voice when you listen to some of the radio communication last week. And now maybe that weight is lifted off his shoulders because he wanted to get to the championship race. But it almost felt like Rudy Fugle had to talk him off a ledge And if things don't start well for him in this race, how does the 24 kind of deal with some of those conditions? I mean, look, HMS was in this spot a season ago. Chase Elliott got caught up in a wreck and was never really competitive. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case for William Byron. And then I know you guys talked a little bit. I caught the tail end of the Christopher Bell conversation. He can come in here, you know, kind of all bets being off. The newness of being in the championship is a little bit of a different dynamic here. You guys mentioned the success that he's had on short, flat tracks, New Hampshire obviously being one of them, significantly better than Phoenix. And I think it makes for a very interesting dialogue with 4 drivers, Kyle Larson being the most decorated as a previous champion coming in here, that all have skill sets that suit themselves well. The one thing, though, that I will close on there in terms of hedging, I'm amazed you guys have an opportunity to do so, because I'm just absolutely so buried on all the Kyle Busch tickets that were made me bet all season long that I'm just hoping to dig out of that hole and make sure it's a small loser when Larson's in victory lane on Sunday instead of getting absolutely kicked in the dick.
What's the last bet you tried to make? What's the last bet you tried to make?
Oh, that's a good story too. So, you know, you can do this a long time and you still do dumb stuff. So on Sunday, all I was telling Worm is that, hey, look, I really feel like Ryan Blaney's going to go out there and have a good piece at Martinsville. Not going to bet him for the race, but I want to try and create a little bit of exposure. We had him in one head-to-head matchup, which worked out well. But because Sunday, like you talked about, Derek, there's so much going on, I have a bet queued up on Ryan Blaney at 12-1 to win the championship before Martinsville starts. And karma got the best of me because I busted Worm's balls about not knowing time zones. I lost track of when the green flag was going to drop at Martinsville. Didn't have a chance to get a little bit of exposure to Blaney at 12-1. So now I'm thinking in the back of my head, there is no doubt in my mind that 12 is going to unload quickly, going to sit on the pole and go out there and dust the field at a price slightly better than 3-1 and make this entire experience absolutely miserable for me come Sunday afternoon.
Oh my. Okay. So that's a good story. That is a good story there. What'd you say?
You can't fix stupid.
No.
Time zone Worm.
Worm is right on that. You can't fix stupid.
No.
Well, over
no,
1.5 wins.
Well, here's what we'll do. We'll get you guys out of here at the top of the hour. So just want to thank you guys. And Todd, I'll start with you. Just thanks for all the support that you give all the guys here and what you and Chris do on a dedicated basis for the entire year of 2023 and all the content that you guys are pushing to help grow the community. Any final thoughts as we close the weekend here?
No, I mean, I think you guys hit on a lot of the keynotes. To echo your sentiments, Derek, look, I mean, we talk all the time about the NASCAR community and what it's done to try and move the gambling discourse along. All you guys that do the show on Wednesday, all the folks that tune in, I mean, deserve a lion's share of the credit. I know Chris and I have a slightly different platform. We're not able to interact the same way on air as you guys are. So hopefully we're able to answer a lot of the questions that people have. We're creating awareness for a sport that becomes such a great vehicle to try and bet. Although anybody who's trying to bet the Xfinity race in Martinsville probably needs their head examined going forward after what we saw last weekend. But I think it's a credit to everybody that takes the time to either listen to the shows, retweet, ask questions, comment, go out of their way. Because we know NASCAR claims that they want to be more heavily involved in sports betting, but quite frankly, we haven't seen NASCAR put their initiatives behind it to be able to make all of that happen. So it's the blood, sweat, and tears, the passion projects that everybody have that are able to try and take this dialogue and continue to move it forward. And we can only hope that there are more and more people that get involved with betting NASCAR. It means bigger limits, more extensive betting markets that are out there. And, you know, every year we continue to do this, it only allows for bigger and better opportunities, hopefully, for everybody involved.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I shared similar things on Phil's podcast yesterday. So we'll see what the future holds for the industry. Chris, have to give you the last word. Any final thoughts as we go into the final race weekend of 2023? Or are you betting horses or penguins or something coming up in the winter months?
No, I think it's hard to really even add to what Todd said. I feel the same way. And we're going to keep, doing what we can to grow the community. But ultimately, we need support, and the more support we can get from the people within NASCAR, the better, because our community is already betting on this sport, right? We can only grab a few extra eyeballs week in and week out. We need the sport to actually help us get the eyeballs and let them know that this is a community, because clearly the market is there when it comes to fans. But a lot of people don't even know that you're able to bet on the sport. So just more eyeballs would be great. And, I think some of that will have to come from NASCAR. And when they're ready to pull the trigger on that, we'll be ready.
Well, guys, I appreciate it again. And thanks for coming on, joining us, closing out our show in 2023. And best of luck with your show here this evening. So thanks again.
One last thing, guys, before we sign off. What happened? Did Rory just have other responsibilities? Is he grown too big for his britches here? Is it just to try and steer people to the Lay and Coin podcast that goes on? I mean, can someone peel back the curtain in terms of what's going on with Rory? Because he can't claim he's coaching softball throughout the course of the year, unless his family members are going to be Olympians. I don't believe he's out there on the mound and working in the cage 365 days a year.
That's a good question.
The co-host responsibilities of my main man Roars have become so overwhelming that he does not have enough hours in the day to show up on StreamYard and record for an hour and a half.
So, Mark, the way that I take that is that Rory can only mail in one podcast and make you carry the responsibility so well, instead of mailing in multiple responsibilities and giving the line that I used to love on Wednesdays. I didn't even look at that market yet. I don't know what you guys are talking about. And know that that's when a Wednesday NASCAR podcast actually got going, when Rory said he hadn't had a chance to look at the numbers, and there was a 50-50 shot. He didn't know what track we were going to for the upcoming weekend.
It's amazing that he wins as much money as he does when we go to record shows, and he's like, let me pull this up. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, pull that up, Rory. Hey, before we go, who's the champion this week?
Blaney, final answer. No odds, Blaney.
I wrote out kind of what you were saying. I wrote out Blaney, but Larson having those 3 weeks to prepare, I feel like, is going to be key.
Todd,
quick.
Not Kyle Busch.
Oh my God!
Can I ask a quick question?
Not Kyle Busch.
I know we're going to overtime. I just want to ask a quick question. Does Larson and Byron both being in the championship before hinder either one of them?
I would say normally if it's a smaller race team, say it was Trackhouse, for example, then it would be a big problem. I think Hendrick is built to try and handle the joint responsibilities here, and having the luxury of working on Larson's car over the last 3 weeks probably gives them a leg up. They know what the setup's going to look like with a team that has those kind of resources. I wouldn't let that serve as a hindrance in any capacity when you're trying to go into it to handicap this race compared to a much smaller team that, say, if RFK was able to get the 6 and the 17 both into the finals, then I'd be a little bit more concerned in terms of where their resource allocation was going.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, guys. Appreciate you guys coming on. And thanks to everybody in the comments on YouTube, Twitter, everything. Can't thank you guys enough. Mark, I'm going to give you the final give you a word here. Tell everybody how they best can support you.
Yeah, man. Lay and Coin comes out every Wednesday night. This is the last one of the season. We're going to take a little break. As last off season, we did not take a break, but we're gonna take a few weeks, maybe a couple months off, and enjoy life. So, the last Through the Gears podcast of the year will be out Friday afternoon, and just support the boys. Let's go out and cash some bets. We got a late one Friday. We're gonna be drinking a bunch of beer after work, so we'll be firing off on X.
Work. LOL.
And playing golf Saturday morning. It's gonna be a hell of a weekend, so I'm fired up, and it'll be a bunch of good content out there. So thank you, Derek.
I like it. Phil, how about you?
Yes, supporting the Full Tank with Phil podcast, and at Full Tank Phil on Instagram, Twitter. Just really appreciate this whole season. It's been crazy how quick this has gone and all the stuff that we've done. And I appreciate everybody in this room right here for everything they do. Like you guys have been saying, it's great. We've got such a great foundation here, and I can't wait to see where this is going. And Mark mentions golf. I'll give you an off-season project, Worm. I'm coming down there with 11 buddies in April, looking for some courses. If you can steer a couple
Anything
my
else
way.
you need?
Yeah,
Phil, don't worry. They know Worm on a first-name basis at Topgolf. He'll set you up with one of the best days they have. You'll be all set and ready to roll.
Well done. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So appreciate it, guys. And I'm also like everybody's opinion when we put out our rosters that Derek and I drafted last night for championship weekend, who people think is going to win. We got a little Venmo bet going on that one. So, yeah, great season, fellas. And I'm looking forward to Daytona before we know it here.
Well, thank you guys again. Thanks for listening. Thank you, In Between Media, for everybody listening on YouTube. Make sure you go support what they're doing, everything with football, lifestyle advice, NASCAR, golf, everything. And make sure you download the NASCAR Betting Preview Show podcast. Thank you again for all that supported this year. Be tremendous to see what some of the content comes out in the off season as we go into 24. And can't thank Phoenix Raceway enough for allowing us to record live from the race track. So thank you guys. Seth, you go ahead. You can hit the outro music, and it's been a great year once again. So thank you guys. Have a good weekend.